Oh, are we a little choppy? Am I a little choppy? What's going on? Got my Ethernet plugged in. What's running here? Let's close that. Excuse me. No, everything's closed. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, hello. Good evening, and I guess Merry Christmas, just about. Just a short stream tonight. Not too much to talk about. There was a couple of things that I did want to talk about. The most important being this right here. Boom. Merzbow Archives on YouTube. 122 subscribers. That's a shame. A damn shame. 133 videos. Whoever this person is, I don't know if it is someone affiliated with Masami Akita himself. It was Masami Akita's birthday on December the 19th, I think. So it was World Merzbow Day. I've talked about his stuff for a long time. So the first album that was posted was 3 months ago. So a newer channel. Merzbow has when I first discovered his stuff in kind of the mid-90s, the Japanese-American Noise Treaty, as well as his infamous Pulse Demon album. That kind of course, especially I would say like the Japanese and American Noise Treaty, was a game changer for me. It really opened my ears to a lot of different music, and I started exploring much different paths. So that was incredible. But I would say that Merzbow is still one of those guys that I just repeatedly go back to. So since discovering this channel, I've listened to a number of albums. I was listening to one today, Orsted, I think it's called, and it was fantastic. The beauty thing with this channel that he's doing is he's really breaking out. There you go. So there's Pulse Demon, 1996. He's breaking it down by kind of decades. So he's got stuff dating back to, I think 1981 is probably the earliest. And it's great to hear that 80s stuff, because the stuff he was doing in the 80s is much different than what he was doing in the 90s and beyond. The 90s and beyond is when he really started to get very, I guess, more harsh, I suppose. The stuff in the 80s was almost electroacoustic. Yeah, here's the one I started listening to today. Made it into the second track. This is a fantastic album, 1996 as well. This is really good. I know the name, the title, but it's not one that I have myself. So it's almost electroacoustic, the 80s stuff. There's almost, it feels like a live band jamming at times in some of it. It's not, all of it isn't that engaging. There was like a couple of the albums I heard from the 80s. There were some big hits and misses within one particular, like in the album itself. So your mileage may vary depending on where you tap into, but I do love that somebody is kind of curating a Merzbow playlist, basically. The 13 Japanese Birds series. I've got that whole series. It's really, really great. But what a resource, man. So in the past, I don't know, past 5 days, I don't know how many Merzbow albums I've listened to, but a good chunk of them. And then you can see here, I've sampled some of them too. I was sure that at one point I might have had this Time Hunter, but I went through my stuff and I don't seem to have it anymore. This was a good one too. This Enclosure was pretty good. 1987. That was a pretty decent listen. Yeah. So if you're interested, if it's something, the one or two of you that are out there that might be interested in listening to more of that, just know that the Merzbow Archives do exist. I'll put a link in the description of this video for that, and you can kind of check it out. Again, like, understand that this is kind of for those of you who are not knowledgeable of noise of any kind. Just understand what you're getting into. You're going to click on a link and make sure that your volume is at a lower level than normal. Don't do any damage to your system or to your sensitive ear holes. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you was this. Fucking boom. We had our elections, and there was, how is that going to go away? How does that go away there? Close that. It started disappearing. There we go. So out of our membership, we had 629 members that were eligible to vote. In order to be eligible to vote, you had to have been in good standing with the local, which means that you had to have your dues paid up. So out of those 629 eligible voters, we had 484 people vote in our election. So 77%. That is unheard of numbers. I'm so fucking proud of the members. It's unbelievable. The last election, we had 10% of the membership vote. And I think in general, that's been about standard. So this one was an amazing showing. I attribute it to a couple of things. One of the things I attribute it to for sure is that right now it's pretty quiet work-wise. Generally with our membership, they get more engaged when there isn't any work. They start kind of looking into their health and welfare benefits. They start contacting the union about various things they maybe have been putting off while they've been working. So I do attribute that some of this to that for sure. This was our first election where we had purely electronic voting. So you got a text on your phone. You just click the phone link and it took you to your page where you can vote. It gave you a confirmation number that was good just for you. And it kind of tracked that you had now voted. Amazing system, so user-friendly. I think approximately 50% of that 484 people voted on that very first day that the polls opened, which was December 5th was that first day. Closed on December 16th at 4:30 is when it closed. So as you can see, I did pretty goddamn well. 200 out of the 471 that voted for president, 263 voted for me, 208 voted for the past president, Nick. So 55.84% of the vote is what I got there. Oops, wrong button. And then my wife did incredibly well as well. So she became the treasurer. Out of the 466 votes, she gained 233, so exactly 50% of the vote. So we did it. We're in there. Now the work begins. I've already started work this week. I was working on kind of starting to get caught up on things that were coming into in January. So it's exciting. I also think that the third part of what I attribute that to is we grinded. Like we reached out to literally hundreds and hundreds of people individually, and then through mass emails, and then holding a campaign event where people could come and meet us face to face and ask us questions and hear what we had to say about things, what we were looking to do if we gained office. So we really put ourselves out there. So I'm really excited that all of that paid out. I'm looking forward to stepping into it officially in January. So there you have it. It doesn't change anything for all of this world, really. For the most part, I don't think it will anyway. I'm sure there'll be times where there'll be some work that comes up, but other than that, nothing should change here. But I did want to share that with the, 70 or 80 of you that tend to watch these videos who have heard me talk about it in the past. So let's get into some shit, shall we? This was for my son. It's going in his stocking, so hopefully he's not watching. It's from Hollow Press. Hollow Press put out a board game, I think last year, called Cyber Flesh, and they put out a comic, a silent comic as well too. So I picked this up to put in his stocking. This is from the amazing Fantasy Club books here. The first three books that we're going to talk about actually are from Fantasy Club books. So shout out to Fantasy Club Books for just kind of continually stocking some incredible comics in the shop here in Winnipeg. I only wish that it was bigger and there was a ton more. But I do know that it isn't cheap or easy to get this stuff across the border to us. So I applaud him for, Austin is his name. I applaud Austin for putting in the work. This was fun. I loved the kind of sort of pixelated art. I don't know how well it's showing up on the camera, but it's got a really great look to it. I more kind of absorbed the art as opposed to really trying to get much out of like a story. I think it's just a setup basically for the world of Cyberflesh to kind of get you into the board game. I don't know if a copy of this comes with the board game as well. I'm not really sure. I think there's some videos on YouTube of people doing unboxings and talking about it, but this was a fun little piece. I really like HoloPress. We've talked about HoloPress quite a bit. I know some other YouTubers like Mr. Earl Grey has talked about HoloPress as well too. So always good to see whatever they're doing. They've got a unique sensibility, and they sort of have they sort of have a wheelhouse as far as the kinds of comics that they're putting out. But this one looks really, really great. It's a lot of fun. So that'll go for my son now that I've had a chance to read that. Let's put it down here. Next from, again, from Fantasy Club. I didn't know anything about this. I don't know anything about this artist. I do know that he is on X. He's on Twitter. This is a tribute comic to Joe Matt by Anthony Woodward. I think that parts of this... This is the second printing that came out in June 2024. Yeah, I think this artwork here appeared in a zine called Essential Spread Love Comics, which I think is Canadian as well. But this is a really nice, it's just a short kind of pamphlet of this Anthony Woodward's appreciation for Joe Matt, talking about when he first discovered Joe Matt, and talking about showing Joe Matt's work to his wife, which is a pretty goddamn funny piece in here. I was already familiar with Crumb, but Joe Matt's work was more modern, more relevant to my age. This guy doesn't hold back. You should read this comic. He's so despicable. She says, okay. Cut to her sitting in bed reading it. You're right. He is gross. I loved it. Is there more? So that's an amazing 4 panels there. So really tells you everything you need to know about the appreciation and respect that this Anthony Woodward is coming from. So this was great. His art style is fantastic. He does his little kind of mimicking Joe Matt style, but this is clearly someone who was a huge fan of Joe, like a lot of us were. So I'm so glad that this was on the shelf. Again, the beauty of having comic shops like this in your area. Like I said, I had no idea that this was out or that this existed. So really, really great to have a comic shop to walk into and see this on the shelf. So if you can find it, it's worth it. I think it's worth it, especially if you're a Joe Matt fan. Very, very short read. Probably not cheap if you do have to get it mailed to you, but honestly, try to get your hands on it. I think it's great. The other one that he's had it in for a while, and for some reason I've just not jumped on it. I'm a huge Mark Bell fan. I took so long to get online tonight is because I was looking through, I've got some old free newspapers called Exclaim. I think I've talked about them years ago. Earl Grey on his channel, I had scanned all of the comics from Mark Bell that appeared in this free newspaper called Exclaim here in Canada. Early 2000s, I want to say 2005, 2006-ish is when he started, but digging through this box of stuff and digging through the storage, it was just a bit of a pain in the ass. So I sort of just gave up and started the stream. Maybe I'll show those off one day. So this is Worn Tough Elbow number 3. This is what I'll say about this. I love Mark Bell's art. I don't really think there's much of anything here. I found it kind of tedious at times to read these pages, as it sort of had a character just walking through the world. And Mark Bell has this amazing way of doing these kind of illustrations and doing these sometimes large illustrations and kind of incorporating a story to some degree within it. I know from my experience with Mark Bell's stuff, his earlier stuff, there's much more of a kind of like gag strip formula or a semblance of a little more of a semblance of a story. This one seems to sort of meander and just kind of move through this world without if there was a point to it, it was lost on me. I found it, like I said, I found it a little tedious to read near the end. So I just kind of did what I think Mark Bell's comics do best, is I just absorbed the art because I absolutely love his artwork. He's been one of my favorites for a long, long time. Like I said, since discovering him in Exclaim. For a while there with Exclaim, I was picking it up for the Mark Bell comics and for the heavy metal and experimental reviews that they would have. More often than not, a lot of the articles and a lot of the interviews they had, there was a ton of people that I wasn't really interested in at all, but I would want to pick it up to get the latest Mark Bell comics. And they had other cartoonists in there as well, but he was the guy that always stood out to me. So yeah, I don't know if I can strongly recommend this one. I think if you're like me and you're a huge Mark Bell fan, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you should get it because of his illustrations, because of his wild, very unique style. It's well worth your time. But if you're new to Mark Bell, if this is the first time you're seeing him, I wouldn't say start here. He does have a couple of other things out. The other 2 things that I pulled from my collection, illustrations, a short book, and this is black and white stuff, and it is kind of like it says, like there is some kind of comic strips in it, but it's mostly just art throughout the whole thing, spanning a longer time period. I'm not sure exactly the time period that it spans, but there's a lot of unique stuff in here. I really, really like this book because it just kind of shows the variety of his styles. Let's see if at the beginning, and just his incorporation of text in with his images as well is so great. So really densely populated illustrations, and then made even more dense with throwing some text in there as well. I love it. Really love it. Half World Books. This came out in 2008. Oh, this was limited to 150 copies. I didn't realize that. Produced by Half World Books in association with a place in Montreal for the occasion of Bell's exhibit of the same name, Illustrations for Brain Police. Okay, so there you go. So Illustrations for Brain Police is what this is called, and was part of an exhibit. So that's a great one. One that's maybe more readily available than that is Pure Pajamas. This is a hardcover. Is this drawn in quarterly? Yes, it is. D&Q. So drawn in quarterly out of Montreal. And this one is great. It's been a long time since I've read this, but there's a lot of great strips in here. I think a couple of his characters, Shrimpy and Paul, maybe are in this one as well. I'm not exactly sure, but like I said, been a long time since I've read this. But this one hopefully is more readily available from Drawn and Quarterly. So there's some Mark Bell for you. Almost finally. It's funny that you end up picking stuff up over the years, and it sometimes takes years to kind of sink in and understand who it is that you've picked up. So lately I've been reading a lot of Olivier Schrowen's stuff. So I read Sunday, and I read that other book that he did. What the heck is it called again? Parallel Lives. Yeah, Parallel Lives. And going through my going through my Treasury Edition stuff, came across this one, Mowgli's Mirror from Schrowen as well. So this is from 2005. It was put out by Retrofit Comics and Big Planet Comics. Now, I know this book. I know the cover. I've seen it out there. For some reason, I didn't put two and two together that this was the same artist. It just didn't register with me until I was kind of looking through my shelf and saw that I had it. So I gave this one a reread. I'll tell you, it read a lot better. It's a silent comic through the whole thing. It read a lot better for me now, knowing Schrowen's work a little better. I seem to remember when I first picked this up, it fell sort of flat for me. I didn't really know what I was looking at. There was nothing about it that kind of jumped out at me other than I did like the oversized piece. I did like the kind of abstract nature of this, like he's going looking for this orangutan character, and he's walking through the wilderness, so it's illustrated in a kind of 2-page spread like this, which I think is really a really great image. This time it read much better than it did the first time. His usual kind of crazy style with these kind of slapsticky almost moments, like here the elephant is shitting on him and he sort of plays with the shit for a bit. It's just it's a fun book. It's a bizarre book. He's very lonely, so he finds this parrot and kind of encases it in shit, and it's now solid in there, and kind of feeds it bananas until the rain kind of washes everything away and it gets struck by lightning. So it's really cool. It's really, really good. And like I said, I think it sat with me better this time around because I now know his work that much more than I did here. So that was a nice surprise, though, pulling that off the shelf and going, oh, shit, I recognize that name. So that was that one. Last thing that I'm almost done reading. I haven't finished yet, and I'm going to apologize up front for saying this because I know that this isn't an easy thing to find, and I'm not just saying this because it's not an easy thing to find. I've been reading, I'm almost done. I'm like 3/4 of the way through this Richard Corbin creepy collection, and holy fuck, this is like amazing story after amazing story. So I think there's a couple of things happening here for me with this book. The main one being it's not Den. It's not Den stories. It's not stuff that appeared in multiple underground comics, sometimes the same story appearing in multiple underground comics. This is almost all new material for me. There's a few stories that I have read before because I've got the odd issue of Creepy and Eerie with Richard Corbin in it. But for the most part, this is jam-packed with stuff I have never read before, I have never seen before. This is an outstanding collection of Corbin's work. I put this up there as one of the best collections of his work that I have in my collection, for sure. And like with that book, Werewolf, that we talked about, one of the things that impresses me the most about this book is the styles that he's using in this. It's like there's 3 or 4 versions of Corbin. You get everything from the rough around the edges, underground comics art of Corbin. You get the little more polished black and white work of Corbin. You get the kind of odd colored kind of Corbin, and then you get the full-on lush, almost hyper-realistic color work from Corbin. It is such a good book. There's so many great stories in here. I will absolutely do a standalone video about this book at some point when I'm done, probably sometime in the new year, to kind of give it its full due, because it's great. It's great. And again, I apologize because it isn't easy to find, and I get it, and that sucks that Corbin stuff goes out of print so quickly and then kind of doesn't see print again. So I don't know the status of these stories. I don't know how it works with Creepy and Eerie. I don't know who owns the rights to these or what the possibility is of this seeing the light of day again. But boy, oh boy, do I hope that this does, because this should be widely available to people. Outstanding. So much fun. I'm loving it. I try to read a few stories a night. It doesn't happen every single night, but I read kind of 3 stories, 4 stories, depending on how long or how short they are. So I'm almost there, almost done. But such a great goddamn book. Speaking of reading, Jeff McLeod. Yes, fantastic indeed. Speaking of reading, my reading this year has really taken a nosedive. So for the past number of years, I've been doing my 500 comics goal. I'm only up to number 430. Pardon me, I haven't pumped in that Corbin book for, I don't know, probably 8. I'm going to probably put it in as like 8 issues, more than likely, because it's such a solid, heavy book. But this will be the first year in a number of years that I don't make the 500 goal, which is both good and bad. I mean, it's good because that means I've been working and doing other stuff this year, which is great. It's nice to be bringing some money in again, obviously. But yeah, I just haven't sat down here a ton and kind of read. I just haven't had time. And then there's been times when I just haven't really felt the need to spend, especially the last few months. I haven't spent nearly as much time in this room as I once did. So I will not make that goal this year, which is kind of crazy. I'll still do some sort of best of video at some point once I've had a chance to go back through the book and kind of pull out some things. I think, as usual, there will be some stuff that won't be a surprise at all, but I'm actually looking forward to revisiting that. That's one of the things that I love doing at the end of the year. I love revisiting the books just to see what I've dug into. Yeah, so I mean, you know, something like this was what year was this? Was this last year's? Yeah, this was 2023. So the first 500 I was finished by October the 23rd for the first 500 books, and it's great to kind of just flip through the whole thing and revisit everything I read that year. So I'm really looking forward to digging through, because I know there's going to be some stuff that I've forgotten about. So I will do some sort of list in the new year, and we'll do a video. I'll probably try to keep it into one video this year. I think the past couple of years I've maybe done a series of them. I'm probably going to try to cut it down quite a bit and limit the amount of books that I talk about, and try to just stuff it into one live stream, maybe like an hour-long live stream, and we'll kind of go through some of the highlights from the year. So with that, that's it. Hopefully Rasa and I are back next week. I did also read Sacrificers, but I want to save that for her when we chat. Of course, I read Kaya the week before, so I want to save those for her as well. And as a quick aside, in a $2 bin, I found a volume of Galaxy Express 999, book number 4. So for $2, I couldn't let that slide. I haven't dug into this yet, but it's sitting on the shelf, getting ready to be read at some point soon. Right on. Jeff McLeod and everybody else that's been lurking. Nice to see you all. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next weekend. Okay, laters. Have a good Christmas. Later.